Republican Congressman Carlos Curbelo is locked in a tough re-election fight against former Congressman Joe Garcia. Curbelo defeated Garcia just 2 years ago, but now the map has been redrawn and District 26 is listed among the most competitive races in the nation. Joining me now to discuss the bitter battle for his seat, Representative Carlos Curbelo. Welcome back to Impact.
Thank you, Jackie. As always, it's great to be here.
My pleasure. So let's talk about, because we're getting to the final stretch of this campaign, how do you feel it's going?
So far, so good. We're getting a great response. I think one of the things that people are most frustrated about with our country's politics is all the bickering between Republicans and Democrats, the nastiness. And in my 2 years in the House, I have worked hard to bring Republicans and Democrats together to the table to have civil discussions about our disagreements and also about where we can work together. And we've had great successes on transportation, $10 billion investment in the state of Florida, education, a signature, a reauthorization of K through 12 policy in the United States, the environment. We just got out of the House approval of the Central Everglades Planning Project, $2 billion worth of investment in the Everglades to in that ecosystem, which is important.
That's a big issue for you.
Well, it's important not just to our environment, but also to our economy, because we need that fresh water to get to Florida Bay. Florida Bay is dying. Florida Bay is under a lot of stress, and we know that tourists from all over the world come to visit Florida Bay. So by working with Republicans and Democrats, I've gotten things done, and ultimately, Jackie, I think that's what people want. People want the politicians to put politics aside and get some good things done for the community. That's the approach I've taken every day in the House.
Let's talk about District 26, because it's a little different than it looked 2 years ago, right? With redistricting a little more Democrat. And all eyes from the country, this has been an incredibly competitive race for this seat. The Democrats want it back. And one of the polls had suggested that you are one of the 10 most vulnerable incumbents in Congress. How do you respond to that?
Well, that's just because the district is so competitive. But what people don't understand is that I like that. You see, my district is about a third Republican, a third Democrat, and a third independent. And that means that you really have to draw from all three pools of voters to get elected. And I think that's what we need in American politics, for people to meet in the middle. I remember as a kid, my grandmother used to always tell me in Spanish, los extremos son malos. The extremes are always bad. And what we've seen is this polarization in American politics that is very dangerous for our country. And by the way, my predecessor, who's my opponent now, played a big part in that. This is someone who went to the House floor, which is kind of like the cathedral of democracy. We have our debates, but Thomas Jefferson wrote the rules for the House floor. We're supposed to be cordial and collegial, not nasty on the House floor. Well, he went to the House floor one day and called other members of Congress who didn't agree with him the Taliban. I mean, that doesn't help us get anywhere, and I have tried to take the exact opposite approach.
Your opponent, Joe Garcia, familiar to you, as you mentioned. You beat him in the last election. Let's talk about him and some of these ads that we're seeing now on television. And we're getting really ads, attack ads, if you will, from both sides. A lot of allegations from his side to your side, a lot of allegations from your side to... So let's clarify it, because he says you're a Trump supporter. Are you a Trump supporter?
Anyone who has been following this presidential campaign has known that for a long time I expressed concern and rejection for Mr. Trump's campaign. Why? Because I think, like the other major party nominee, these campaigns have been trying to divide the American people. And that's the opposite of what we need right now. So my record is clear. Look, I'm focused on my race. I think both of these candidates have let the American people down. There's a reason why they are the #1 and the #2 least popular candidates in the history of our country. About 2/3 of Americans say they wish they had other choices. I'm one of those Americans. So I'm focused on my race.
So who are you going to vote for?
Well, what my wife and I have decided is that when the time comes to vote, and it is approaching, we're going to make a decision. Maybe we'll write someone in. Maybe we'll vote for a third-party candidate. We have decided as a family that neither of these candidates represent our values, represent our vision for the future of this country. I mean, these candidates, both of them, have offended millions of Americans. Recently, we learned that the Clinton campaign trashed Catholics. I'm a Catholic. My wife and I are raising our little girls in the faith. That hurt. Who hasn't Mr. Trump offended? I mean, this is just very unfortunate what's happened to the country.
But one of these two candidates is going to be president.
And that's why this district and this community, and I think every community in this country, needs a member of Congress that is going to be able to stand up to whoever wins this election, and also who's going to be willing to sit with that person and find common ground where it's possible. That's who I am, and that is my pledge to my community, no matter who wins.
Let's talk about
risks going forward, and I'm going to be there to always represent this community's interests.
Another allegation, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. What would you do with that?
It needs to be replaced, Jackie. Look, I don't question the intentions of those who came up with this concept. I think our country did need health care reform. The old system wasn't exactly great. But what's happened is that Obamacare has given a lot of politicians, like my opponent, a soundbite. They can say X number of Americans are now insured who weren't insured, but the dirty little secret is that a lot of these people still don't have access to quality care. Why? Because sure, they're insured, but they're under these high deductible plans, and then when they go to actually get service because they're sick, they can't pay. And they end up in the ER just like they used to. There's also a provision in this legislation that is very harmful to low-income people, which is the 30-hour work week. That has cost millions of Americans income and time that they want to work. I tell people, when my dad came to this country, he didn't want to work 30 or 40 hours. He wanted to work 80 hours, and this law hurts people who want to work more. Okay, let's talk about your constituents again, because it's all about them. What is the biggest issue, in your estimation, is facing your constituents today? Jackie, there's still a lot of economic insecurity out there. People do understand that the economy has gotten better. There has been a recovery, but it hasn't really been a vigorous recovery. There's a lot of people out there working part-time who'd like to be working full-time. There's a lot of college graduates who invested in their degrees, got into debt. Half of college graduates today, those graduating with a four-year degree, are working in jobs that don't require a four-year degree. That means that they're not getting a good return on investment on their diploma. So we need to continue strengthening the economy, promoting job creation, making sure that we don't overrun the economy and suffocate it. So that's what I'm focused on. But I want to go back to what I think is what really has a lot of Americans down this year, and it is the tone, the tenor, and the nature of our politics. The corruption, the lies, the insults. That's not the country I grew up in. That's the kind of country that my dad told me he left, where politics was nasty and where everyone would tear each other down and cheat and lie. And what I have done in the Congress, and I pledge to continue doing, is trying to bring Republicans and Democrats together, understanding that we're not going to agree on every issue, and we shouldn't. But that doesn't mean that we can't be like Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, who figured it out, or even Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich, who figured some things out and passed laws that ended up benefiting the country. So you would cross party lines in order to do what's best for your constituents? I've done it. When I ran last time, I said I'm willing to work with anyone who's willing to help me, help my community, and strengthen this country. And that's what I've done. And I've also conducted myself with decency and with integrity. I brought this because I wanted to show you. This is one of the newspapers that gets printed on Capitol Hill every day. This is Mr. Garcia, featured for scandal and corruption. These are other members of Congress who've been indicted or convicted. Someone with that reputation cannot effectively represent our community in the Congress. It's just impossible. So I have done my best to honor the trust and confidence that the voters gave me 2 years ago, and I'm asking for another opportunity. Representative Carlos Curbelo, good luck to you. Thank you so much, Jackie.